Okay, moving straight on, I'm very pleased to welcome Alex Miles, who is the Managing Director for Yorkshire Learning Providers, who's going to talk to us about green apprenticeships.
Thank you. Thank you, everybody, for joining me this afternoon. 15 minutes is a really quick whistle-stop tour of what is happening in the world of green and sustainable development within apprenticeships, but I will endeavour to bring this information to you. So, green apprenticeships, what are they? Businesses are encouraging, or the government are encouraging businesses to look at and use apprenticeships to be positive vehicles for change in terms of the environment and sustainable development. So the Institute for Apprenticeships, who create the apprenticeship standards, have started developing some green apprenticeships, and the Institute have now got a focus of every single apprenticeship having sustainable development woven through it. So every apprentice moving forward will have some kind of environmental and green and sustainability aspect of their apprenticeship woven through their knowledge, their skills and their behaviours. There are a range of dedicated green apprenticeships, but as Simon said, actually sustainable development and the green agenda can be woven into any curriculum area and into any job role, into any vocation. So I always use the kind of green bit with quotations, because actually any job can be green and any vocation should be green. We shouldn't have kind of dedicated green apprenticeships, but we do. But as I said, the Institute are working. So if you are interested in the work that you can do to save the planet and work for a business that is more environmentally and socially and just conscious about their corporate responsibility as a business, then you can actually use the apprenticeship standards and the apprenticeship pathways to support your kind of vision and ethos with that. And the great things about apprenticeships is that they are flexible and adaptable. So if you or your business have got something that they would like to do in the space of environmental or sustainable practice, then the apprenticeship will absolutely lend itself to that area. We've just been working on a project across all of the north of England to look at how sustainable development can be mapped into every single apprenticeship standard. There are 750, so we haven't got there just yet, because there's quite a lot of apprenticeship standards, but we're actually trying to prove the point that any job and any vocation and any company should be more conscious about the planet and more conscious about what they do in terms of their corporate social responsibility. So we've just been doing a project to look at mapping that, and there's some really brilliant businesses that we worked with on that in some really kind of unique curriculum areas, and I've got some of that information to share with you in a minute. So apprenticeships are a really great tool to aid businesses in terms of their environmental, their social and their sustainable practices, and businesses report back to me all the time that in interviews apprentices have actually asked the business, or what are you doing about your carbon footprint, or what are you doing about your your green and sustainable corporate social responsibility, or how are you reducing your outputs, or what are you doing to become a more digitised business, and employers really value that apprentices are going and taking that as part of their interview and really kind of challenging the business and challenging that status quo, and looking at kind of tipping it on the business's head. And then what businesses will love to do is then say, we know we need to do more, do you have any ideas? And that's where that kind of exchange, that knowledge exchange, that idea exchange really starts to take place. So there are some really brilliant things happening through the use of just a standard apprenticeship that are supporting that environmental, social and sustainable practice. Apprenticeships are, and apprentices particularly, are changing the landscape of apprenticeships through the knowledge, skills and behaviours and the work that they're doing and their interventions. As I said, they can be completely adapted to what you want to do, to what the business wants to do. And as I've said, that they are there challenging that status quo, and that's the brilliant thing about an apprenticeship. You can go in and challenge that industry norm, you can go in and challenge that status quo, and if you do it linked to that kind of corporate social responsibility around green and the environment and sustainable practices, then employers will love it. So there are some, as I said, specific or dedicated green apprenticeships that you can go straight into doing. So some of them are kind of land-based apprenticeships. There are now apprenticeships in low carbon and in the electrification agenda. And then a really recent one is a degree apprenticeship in sustainability and corporate responsibility. They're two kind of new ones. So that's a specific job role that somebody will go in and be that organisation's sustainability champion or sustainability specialist, or they will go in and work with them on that corporate responsibility that I talked about, and that particularly links to that sustainability practitioner. So they're two brilliant apprenticeship standards that have come out really, really recently, as well as some of the more land-based and then electrification standards and the low carbon one as well. So they're the ones at the moment. There are more being added all the time, but they're the ones that are kind of dedicated green apprenticeships. But as we kind of champion the fact that every job and every vocation and every apprenticeship standard could be green and should be more sustainably aware and more sustainably astute. So there's a lot that can be done in the other apprenticeship standards as well. So how can apprenticeships support businesses in terms of their net zero goals? So I speak to a lot of businesses about how they can become more net zero or more sustainably aware. And the first thing that I say is employ an apprentice, because apprentices really can be those positive changes, that challenging those industry norms. But why apprenticeships are really, really brilliant vehicles of positive change is because they are built upon developing knowledge, skills and behaviours that are linked to that specific workplace, that are linked to that specific job role and are linked to that area of work, which means it has the freedom and the flexibility to be able to tie in anything to do with that workplace or that job role. So if an apprentice or an employer has got a green or sustainable focused agenda or project or output or vision or ethos as a company, then the apprenticeship route is a really great vehicle to start that journey. And the knowledge, skills and behaviours are developed by industry specialists through the Institute for Apprenticeships, and they are now being challenged by government to make sure that their standards are more sustainably aware. So now every single standard that gets brought out and every single standard that gets reviewed has to have this element of green running through it. Every apprentice, as part of their apprenticeship on any standard, regardless of level or regardless of vocation or sector, are always encouraged to identify ways of improving practice, improving their job role, improving a specific project, looking at efficiencies. So apprentices are encouraged to do that, and there isn't an apprenticeship standard out there that doesn't have some form of an apprentice going in and looking for positive change in their organisation. It doesn't matter whether they're doing an electrical engineering apprenticeship or a childcare apprenticeship. The point of an apprentice is that they can come in with that fresh pair of eyes and that new lens on the way that the industry works. So wherever possible, apprentices are encouraged to find new ways of working. So we always say it's a really great thing to do is looking at that waste, doing a bit of a waste audit. We've got apprentices doing waste audits every single day with their organisation, looking at reduce, reuse, recycle approaches. We've got catering apprentices and apprentices that look after the golf green, coming together to do a project around waste and looking at buying local and shopping local. That's not part of the apprenticeship standard necessarily, but it's interested parties wanting to do something really good for their businesses and their local community. Every single apprentice will also develop their critical thinking skills and develop their agency and develop their advocacy skills. So again, the green agenda and sustainable development is a brilliant platform to give apprentices those opportunities to be those agents of change and to really advocate for what they want to challenge or what they want to see differently in the organisation. And as I've said, challenge that status quo and challenge those industry norms. So, you know, don't be shy if you are an apprentice or if you are a parent of, or carer of an apprentice. Really encourage that positive voice, really encourage them to step up and come to the table with ideas I've employed apprentices for 20 years and every single one of them have come into my organisation, changed something for the better, made us leaner, more sustainable, more efficient, improved our marketing or our website or our client engagement activities, because that's the point of apprenticeships, to come in and be those vehicles of change. Employers help co-design, so wherever possible, the training organisation or the college and the employer and the apprentice should be able to sit down and co-design their knowledge, skills and behaviours, so they can absolutely align that to the sustainable development agenda and the green agenda. So again, when you are becoming an apprentice or you're going for your interview, if you start having to think about what you might want to do as a project or what you might want to get involved in, or how you can kind of co-design and co-create what your knowledge, skills and behaviours are around that sustainable area, then employers will really, really value your response on that. So another thing that's being built into every apprenticeship is called the Sustainable Development Goals. So this is a European, every country in Europe have adopted the UNESCO 17 Sustainable Development Goals. And each one of those are being weaved into apprenticeships. As I said, the Institute for Apprenticeships has now been given a remit by government to make sure that they are in every single apprenticeship, not just those 6 or 7 green ones. So if there is a particular area around the Sustainable Development Goals that apprentices or employers particularly focused on, or you can use 1 or 2 of those goals to do a business improvement project or to do something around social responsibility, then again, businesses will snap your hand off at that. And then I mentioned that we've been doing some mapping, so not just we've been looking at apprenticeships, the non-traditional, that you wouldn't necessarily associate with being green or sustainable development. So we've mapped sustainable development and green practices into a range of different apprenticeship standards. This is the early years one. So we've now got early years training providers going out to nurseries and speaking to apprentices about how they can be more green and more clean and more aware of the planet, and where they're purchasing their produce from. And apprentices have now come up with projects in each one of those sustainable development areas that they're working on within their nursery. We've also mapped it into teaching assistants, we've also mapped it into the hair and beauty apprenticeship standard, and we've now got salons all over Yorkshire doing the Green Salon Challenge, and the apprentices are leading this. They're leading this change and looking at how they can reduce, reuse, refill, recycle and be much more astute in their sustainable practices in their waste. We've also mapped it into the adult social care and into some of the health and social care standards, and just looking at some key ways that we can be more aware of purchasing power, and how we can work together collaboratively to support our communities or to support our young people. And we've also worked with the Federation of Small Businesses to develop a guide on how businesses can become more sustainable, and we've built that guide into apprentices' induction plans. So every apprentice will get an induction on about how their role could be more sustainable, and the first project that apprentices do with the colleges and providers we work with will be a sustainable development activity on how they think their job role could be greener, leaner or cleaner. And these are just some of the projects that are currently happening with apprentices at the moment around the green space. So like I've mentioned, waste audits. So going into the employer and that apprentice and that young person or adult apprentice, going in and actually looking at saving those businesses thousands and thousands of pounds by doing a waste audit. We've got loads of apprenticeships now that have adopted the reduce, reuse, recycle approach, which is an approach that's already in early years education but hasn't quite transcended into further education or higher education yet. So we've adopted it through apprenticeships, so apprentices can go in and go around their organisation, around their job role, and look at how they can reduce, reuse, recycle. Looking at purchasing policies and supply chain policies, looking at how businesses can become more digitised and reviewing their digital transformation opportunities. Having opportunities for apprentices to be those agents of change and have given them platforms where they can meet up with other apprentices and share aspirational, inspiring stories. We're encouraging every business that has an apprentice to make that apprentice a sustainability champion. So we're going around and doing lots of training of apprentices to become sustainability champions. Green, lean and clean projects, a lot of decarbonisation projects and reducing carbon footprint projects are happening with apprentices. We've got electrical engineering apprentices doing waste audits on their building site, which sometimes doesn't go down super well. But actually they're challenging that industry norm, they're challenging that waste. And actually businesses love it, maybe the people on the site don't love it as much. And then we also look at where we can work collaboratively. So like I said, a hospitality and a green worker apprentice coming together to save their local golf club lots and lots of money. And as you may know, Ofsted now inspect apprenticeships, or have been inspecting apprenticeships for many, many years. But Ofsted are now looking at how apprenticeship providers are responding to the green and sustainable development agenda. So they're looking at how apprentices benefit from aspects of being more energy environmentally efficient and aware, and having a look at the ethical impacts of their job role. So it's an area that's definitely growing, and it's an area that's getting a lot more focus. So it's a great opportunity to be those vehicles of change. And that's it.
Thank you very much. Any really quick questions for Alex before we move on to the next session? If not, then Alex has got a stand downstairs. Do you remember which number it is? No. It's Yorkshire Learning Providers. It's downstairs. It's in the guide. Just look it up. Alex will be around if you have any questions. And if not, then we have another speaker about to join us. Thank you, Alex.